My name is Lucas. I'm 28 years old. After my divorce, I moved to a small village called Dartmoor in southwest England. Aside from my parents' place, I didn't really have anywhere else to go, so I ended up staying in my grandfather's old cottage. He passed away a few years ago and left the property to us. It's about 10 minutes outside the village, sitting on 10 acres surrounded by moorland and woods. It's quiet out there. I thought I'd appreciate that. The cottage is old, wooden floors that creak, doors that stick, the kind of place that always feels cold no matter how high the thermostat goes. But it was free, and I didn't have a better option. The first few nights were uneventful. I unpacked and cleaned. I spent evenings sitting on the porch with a pint. It was peaceful. No traffic, just wind through the trees and the occasional owl. But then the noises started. The first time I heard it was on the 7th night. I'd just gotten into bed around midnight. I was nearly asleep when I heard whistling outside. It wasn't a tune I recognized, just a slow, broken melody. Off-key. It sounded like someone walking through the woods behind the cottage, whistling as they went. It unsettled me, but I figured it was some hunter or drunk local. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same tune, but this time it sounded closer. I got out of bed and turned on the porch light, but saw nothing. I stepped outside with a torch and checked around the yard. Nothing. No tracks, no sound of someone fleeing, just the whistling fading deeper into the woods. I tried to ignore it. For a few nights, I stayed in bed and tried to sleep through it, but every time the whistling would start around 1:17 a.m. I know that sounds random, but I swear it was always between 1:15 and 1:19, like clockwork. I started thinking maybe someone was messing with me, someone who knew I was out there alone. I called the local constable a few days later. An old officer I'll call Constable Harris came out. He'd been on the job for decades. When I told him what was happening, he got quiet. He said, word for word, "Your granddad used to ring us about the same thing. Said someone was whistling around the property late at night, always in spring. We never found anything, thought he was just getting on, but now you're hearing it too." That rattled me. I had no idea my grandfather dealt with this. Constable Harris told me to keep the doors locked and stay inside after dark. I started doing that. Not like I wasn't already. I double-checked every window. One night I even wedged chairs under the doorknobs, but the whistling kept creeping closer every night. One night I heard it behind the shed, louder than usual, like the person was standing right outside. I grabbed my torch and peeked through the blinds. I didn't see anyone, but I didn't dare go outside. The next night I heard it from the front porch, right by the door. 3 long whistles. Then silence. The night after that, it came from under the floorboards. I swear to God, it was like someone was in the crawl space, whistling up through the vents. I didn't sleep at all that night. I started digging through the attic the next day, searching for anything my grandfather might have left behind. I found a box of his journals. He wrote about the whistling, said it happened every spring for over 10 years. He didn't know who it was, but he believed someone was watching the cottage. He said he used to sit up with a rifle by the front door just in case. Said it only ever happened when he lived alone after my grandmother passed. I called the constable again. He came by, read the journal, and looked uneasy. He told me to be careful, said, "Don't open the door if you don't know who it is." That night I stayed up. I sat on the sofa with a shotgun across my lap, a shotgun I barely knew how to load. I waited. At 1:17 a.m., the whistling started again. But this time it wasn't outside. It came from the hallway inside the cottage. I froze. The hallway light was off. I could hear the whistling moving closer, step by step. I stood up, aimed the shotgun, and shouted, "Who's there?" The whistling stopped. I flipped the hallway light on. Nothing was there. No one. I didn't sleep again after that. 2 nights passed, and I hadn't heard it again. I was getting sick. I didn't know who this person was. I didn't know why they picked me or my grandfather, but it was real. I don't believe in hallucinations to that degree, nor do I believe in anything paranormal. This was a real person. After that night, things went quiet for 2 days. No sounds, no movement, no sign of anything. I thought maybe it was finally over. On the 3rd night, I went to bed, just after midnight. I didn't stay up this time. I left the hallway light on just in case. At exactly 1:17 a.m., I woke up to a new sound. Not whistling, but knocking. Slow, spaced-out knocks. 3 of them. They came from inside the cottage, from the back door. Then silence. I didn't move. I stayed in bed, listening. A minute later, I heard a new sound. Creaked from the floorboards, in the hallway. And then another. Someone was walking. The hallway light went out. I grabbed my shotgun, heart pounding, and stepped out of the bedroom. The hallway was dark, but at the end of it, I saw something. A person wearing black clothes, pale face. They were standing perfectly still, just watching me. I raised the shotgun, but my hands were shaking. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. I screamed, "Don't move," with a shaky voice. I saw the person slowly start lifting their leg and turning like they were about to run. I shouted, "Stop." And at that moment, they darted out of the hallway, out of sight. I heard their surprisingly heavy footsteps stomping out the front door into the dark. I ran outside and fired a shot, not into the air, but straight ahead into the darkness, low-key hoping I'd hit him. I screamed, "Don't come back." The shot rang in my ears, echoing off the cottage walls and deck. I locked up, got in my truck, and drove into the village. I slept in my truck that night. The next morning, Constable Harris drove out there, and the front door was unlocked again. That confirmed whoever it was had a key to my grandfather's cottage. Nothing was broken or missing, but Harris recommended I change the locks. He also, off the record, suggested I move out. Said someone out in those woods hasn't taken kindly to either my grandfather or me being in that cottage. I went to the local hardware store and changed the locks that same hour. After that, I left the cottage and went to my parents' place out of county for a while. I left it to my dad to eventually sell it. Anything sentimental we took out, and the rest was just left or sold. My father, of course, left out the fact that some creep had been stalking the place for decades. How they got a key, who they were, why my grandfather never said anything, I don't know. It all disturbs me deeply. I personally think he was some disturbed loner living nearby. I eventually moved to a more urban area. This experience left me honestly too unsettled to ever live in a remote location again. I'm 16 and live in the city now, but I spent the first 8 years of my life in the Welsh countryside. For some, it might sound strange, but I was allowed from a very young age to roam the village unsupervised. The area wasn't large, and the population barely hit 90. Everyone knew everyone. So well, in fact, that my friends and I could match car plates to their owners without hesitation. It was a scorching summer day. My friend Sam and I were dying for some Coca-Cola. Back then, soda was cheap at the tiny village shop, and we just needed a few coins to buy 2 cans. Luckily, an elderly woman called us over from her garden. She said she was preparing mint tea for her birthday gathering, but had run out of mint leaves. She offered to buy us as much soda as we wanted if we could fill 2 plastic bags with mint. Sam and I jumped at the chance. I didn't want to ask my parents for money. Later that day, we started searching. The sun was frying our foreheads and our clothes were soaked in sweat. We scoured the hedges and fields, but despite our effort, we barely filled half a bag. Frustrated, we kept walking, hoping for a miracle, a field bursting with mint. Then, out of nowhere, 2 tall guys appeared. And when I say tall, they were probably around 5'7", but to our 7-year-old selves, they looked like giants. What struck me most was their clothing, both dressed in black hoodies and tight jeans. They didn't seem older than 17, though their faces were hard to make out. They spoke in soft, friendly voices, carefully chosen to sound harmless. "Are you kids out here alone?" Sam glanced at me, clearly uneasy, and made a subtle hand gesture to leave, but I was clueless about body language, so I didn't catch on. I turned back to the guys and said cheerfully, "Yeah, we're looking for mint leaves." Then I asked if they knew where we could find some.
I remember one of them smirking when I mentioned mint. One crouched beside me and patted my head. Sam stepped in quickly, pulling me back by the arm. His face was tense, almost panicked, and he asked, "Who are your parents?" In our village, that question meant giving your family name. With so few families, it was how people identified each other. Sam was born there, so he knew everyone. I think he was scared because he didn't recognize these two, and the fact that they were talking to us alone and touching me set off alarm bells. Just as Sam feared, they dodged the question. Their focus was clearly on me. "Actually, I've seen a big mint field. See that hill over there? That's where we're from. We can take you there and help fill your bags." Of course, we knew that hill. Sam and I and the other kids played hide and seek in its woods at night. It was magical. But never had I seen mint growing there. Only corn, grapes, and the occasional watermelon. Still, I was a naive kid, and none of the red flags registered. I nodded eagerly and tugged Sam's arm to follow. The guys looked pleased and started leading the way. We walked farther and farther from the village. I felt Sam's hand trembling in mine. A chill ran down my spine. The village was now out of sight. The forest loomed ahead, and there was no sign of mint. I asked where we were going, but they gave vague replies like, "You'll see," or "Just be patient." My steps slowed. Panic surged through me. I sensed something terrible was coming, but I couldn't stop walking. I knew if either of us turned back, something really bad would happen. Then, quietly, he leaned close and whispered in my ear, words I still hear clearly to this day. "Something's wrong with them. Run." That was all he said before he bolted downhill, dragging me with him. His grip never loosened. I ran like my life depended on it, and it probably did. I heard the guys curse behind us and start chasing. I cried loudly, terrified, but didn't stop. I don't think I was even breathing. Somehow, I ran nearly 2 kilometers back to the village without stopping. The woman who'd asked us to find mint saw us, faces pale, soaked in sweat and tears. As we neared the village, the guys must have stopped following. She brought us inside and gave us chocolate to calm down. She asked what happened, and Sam explained. My mouth was frozen. When he finished, she gave us a worried look and scolded us for being reckless. Well, she scolded Sam since he lied and said I didn't want to follow the strangers, and he insisted we trust them. After that, Sam wasn't allowed outside for a month. I needed time to recover from the trauma. We never found out who those guys were or what they wanted. Looking back now, older and wiser, I have a pretty good guess, and it chills me. While we were running, I could have easily tripped. Sprinting downhill at that speed was dangerous. If it weren't for Sam, who's now my boyfriend, I don't even want to imagine what might have happened.
When I was little, my parents worked constantly. Both had 2 jobs just to support me and my older brother Ben. Their schedules kept us afloat, but they were gone most of the time. So they hired a babysitter through a website. She was a young white woman, maybe in her early 20s, named Emily. For about 4 or 5 months, Emily came over every weekday to look after us. I was 7, Ben was 8, and we loved having her around. She was energetic, kind, and fun. Way better than some grumpy older sitter who'd just nap all day. Ben and I did online classes since regular school was too hard for our parents to manage, and Emily helped with that too. When summer arrived, my parents told Emily to take a break and enjoy her vacation. She'd earned it, but that meant we didn't have a sitter for the summer. Rather than search for someone new, my parents decided to take Ben and me to our grandparents' house in rural Devon. It was a bit of a drive from our home in Bristol, but worth it for a full summer stay. That Saturday, we packed up and hit the road. The drive was scenic, but to my younger self it felt endless and nauseating. We finally arrived at their house, a medium-sized cottage in the middle of a wide field with woods stretching behind it. Off to the side stood a barn-style building with pens for cows, goats, chickens, and other animals. We said our hellos, and Grandpa immediately wanted to show Ben and me around. My parents stayed inside, chatting with Grandma while she cooked dinner. That night was lovely. We caught up with Grandma and Grandpa and played with their dog, Luna. When bedtime came, Ben and I shared a room with a bunk bed and a small TV. The room next door was where our parents slept. They were exhausted from the drive and fell asleep quickly. Ben and I stayed up a bit longer watching cartoons, then drifted off with the TV still on. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps outside our window. Heavy ones. I couldn't see anything. The blinds were closed, but I could hear them clearly. Ben didn't stir. The TV was still playing. Then I heard a strange noise at the window, followed by a grunt. Someone was trying to open it. I ran to my parents' room and woke them up. They didn't believe me, said it was probably my imagination. When they checked, nothing was there. They chalked it up to an animal. We were in the countryside after all. Maybe my kid brain had exaggerated things. I lay awake for 5 minutes, then fell back asleep. The next morning, I woke to the smell of Grandma's cooking. My parents were packing to head home. We all ate breakfast together, then they left. Grandpa took Ben and me to feed the animals and walk Luna. I asked to hold Luna's leash, and Grandpa handed it to me with a smile, telling me to hold tight. As we walked the trail, Luna kept stopping every few steps. I finally looked to see why, and saw her staring into the woods. I hesitated, then looked where she was focused. A black figure stood there, watching us. Even though he was cloaked in shadow, I could feel his gaze. He was half hidden behind a tree, hands pressed against the bark like he was peeking, but with his whole body. I turned to tell Grandpa, but he and Ben were already 15 feet ahead. I ran to catch up, tugging Luna along. When I told Grandpa what I saw, the figure was gone, vanished. I should have seen him run, but there was nothing. Grandpa had heard about the window incident the night before, so he didn't dismiss me. I saw concern in his eyes, but he said it was probably a deer and that I'd scared it off. After feeding the animals, we returned to the house. The rest of the day was fun, movies, playing in the sprinklers. That night, Grandma made an incredible dinner. I was stuffed and exhausted. I took a quick bath and headed to bed. Ben and I watched cartoons again and fell asleep. Around 1 a.m., I woke to humming outside the window. It was the theme song of Cyber Chase, the show playing on our TV. Ben, a deep sleeper, didn't wake. The blinds were still closed, so I couldn't see anything, but I knew it wasn't an animal. It had to be a person. At first, I thought maybe Grandpa was outside smoking and humming along. Silly, I know. I called out, "Grandpa." The humming stopped. 30 seconds passed in silence. Then I heard, "Hey, it's Grandpa. Come out here, kid. I want to show you something cool." I slipped on my shoes and stepped outside. No lights were on, but the stars were beautiful. I walked to the window and saw Grandpa standing there. He reached out his hand. I took it, and he began leading me toward the barn. I tried asking where we were going, but he didn't respond. That's when things started to feel wrong. Why would Grandpa be outside at 1 a.m. showing me something cool? Why was he wearing a hooded sweater? Then I looked at his hand. It wasn't Grandpa's. It was younger. I tried pulling away, but his grip tightened. I didn't want him to know I'd figured it out, so I stayed quiet, heart pounding. Then I heard a long handle sticking out of his waistband. Panic surged through me. Suddenly, I heard Grandpa's voice calling from the house. I didn't respond, but the man turned toward the sound. In that moment, I yanked my hand free and backed away. He stood still for a second, then bolted into the woods. I ran straight to the house, screaming. Grandpa was waiting with open arms. Grandma was on the phone with the police. They arrived quickly and searched the area. They found the man hiding in a ditch not far from the house. In the ditch were items he'd stolen from the barn. Most disturbing of all, he had an axe tucked into his pants. The shed's lock had been broken, leaving tools exposed. A few days later, Grandpa learned that the man was Emily's ex-boyfriend. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel confessed to stalking us and planning to take me that night. He said he targeted me because he knew Emily cared deeply about me. His plan was to use me to manipulate her, threaten me to make her do whatever he wanted. He claimed he never intended to hurt me. After the incident, our parents picked us up a week later. They started searching for better jobs so they could be home more often. They also let Emily go, understandably.
I'm grateful the police station was nearby, but most of all, I'm thankful Grandpa woke up that night to use the bathroom. Even 20 years later, I still get chills thinking about what could have happened.